The IELTS speaking section is public speaking. Why? You're only talking with one other person, the examiner, and not hundreds. The basic concepts are the same. You need to convince your audience with good fluency and confident language. In this lesson, I am interviewing a world-renowned expert in public speaking whose advice will help you to master the IELTS speaking exam and get those high band scores. Welcome, Mr. Doyle, a professor of public speaking and advisor to many famous public figures. Now watch and learn. I have a very special guest here with me today. I have Jacob Doyle, who is an expert in public speaking and has taught public speaking for Macdonald College. And we are here to discuss the similarities between public speaking and the IELTS speaking exam. Welcome, Mr. Doyle.
Thanks for having me, Adrian. It's good to be here.
In order to help IELTS candidates improve their communication in English and achieve the highest scores possible, even that coveted Band 9 perfect score in the IELTS exam, we want to shed some light on key aspects of public speaking and how the IELTS interview relates to public speaking. Before we jump in, Mr. Doyle, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in this sphere?
Sure. I began my involvement with public speaking back in the early 1990s when I was a speechwriter for a politician in Long Island, which is part of New York State. So I wasn't doing public speaking myself, but I was writing speeches for someone who was. And I was able to also watch him make public speeches and give him feedback. And I think I learned a lot about the whole process and practice of public speaking in that time. And then later, I did give presentations as an internet entrepreneur a little bit later in the 90s. And then eventually, I wound up teaching public speaking, as you mentioned. And so I applied what I'd learned both as a speechwriter and as a public speaker myself and taught the subject to students.
And how would you define public speaking?
Public speaking is speaking to a group of people, some of whom are unknown to you personally, on topics which are relevant to them and relevant to the larger public, at least in your mind. So they may be personally interested in what you have to say, or you may be personally interested in saying something to them, perhaps to sell them something, or to convince them of something, or simply to inform or educate them.
Interesting. Now, this is where, as an IELTS instructor for many, many years and content creator, I've recognized similarities. Of course, the IELTS examiner is a stranger to the candidate. They are unfamiliar with each other, and the candidate's goal is to answer questions presented by the examiner, of course, which they are interested in for the purposes of evaluating English, and it's the candidate's goal to communicate the responses clearly with good explanations, examples to support those ideas. Would you agree with me that even though in the IELTS context the candidate is speaking only to one listener, it could still be in some ways referred to as public speaking?
I would agree with that, specifically for the reason you stated. The IELTS examiner, is someone that the person taking the test doesn't know. And so it's an unfamiliar situation, so it bears a lot of similarity to speaking even to a large group of people.
And how does public speaking differ from casual, everyday language? And now the reason I ask this is because there are a lot of IELTS candidates out there who have this misconception that they're simply going into an everyday conversation where they're presenting the same type of language that they would use with their friends or acquaintances, peers, co-workers in everyday context. Could you shed some light on the difference between casual, everyday language versus public speaking?
Public speaking differs from casual speech in one very important way. It's what I would call responsibility. Public speaking is more responsible speech because it's part of the public record. You're not just casually talking to a friend about some subjects that you both enjoy, and you can kind of be at your leisure and not really worry about what you say, because what are your friends going to do? Maybe talk about it with their other friends, but it's not part of the public record. However, when you're speaking publicly, or even if you're just speaking to an examiner, or when you're speaking perhaps at a job interview, everything you say may be recorded, and it's going to become part of the public record. It may even influence people's lives and the decisions they make. So you want to make sure that you're well prepared for that speech and that you deliver it well. And these are some considerations that you generally don't have to make when just speaking casually.
And that's very, very interesting because, of course, every IELTS interview is recorded. And that's some of the first words that candidates hear from the examiners is, I'm recording this interview for marking purposes. And what they do with that recording is they listen to it, if necessary, to adjust the marking. And in case the candidates are not satisfied with their mark, they can request a remark. It's called an inquiry of results for the IELTS, whereby at least 1 to 2 more examiners will listen to that recording independently, evaluate the responses, and adjust the mark accordingly. To give some tools to our viewers and IELTS candidates, kind of an interesting and specific question I'd like to ask you is, what do you think are 3 of the most important aspects to pay attention to when giving like a 2-minute presentation to the audience? And the reason I ask this, of course, is because in the IELTS speaking exam, it's made up of 3 parts, and the second part demands that the candidate speak for 2 minutes on a specific topic, like talk about a great business idea that you have had, why you had this idea, what you need to make this idea a reality. So what would be 3 of the main kind of concepts to really pay attention to when delivering such a 2-minute response?
Yes, the three components of a good 2-minute speech, or let's say the 3 things you should pay attention to, are structure, delivery, and content. Structure, when you're considering the structure of your speech, you want to make sure that your speech is clear, logical, compelling. It has a strong introduction, concise body, and a memorable conclusion. So this is what I would call the structure of your 2-minute speech. The delivery of your speech is how you say your speech, how you deliver it to your audience. The best way to have a good delivery is to prepare ahead of time, to practice your speech, to make sure you know what you're going to say, that you're able to say it within the 2 minutes, that you don't go over or that you don't go under. And also that you work on your body language. You try to stay enthusiastic, and that you look in the eyes of your audience when you're speaking, even if it's just a single person. You should also strive to speak clearly as well as enthusiastically. I think I just mentioned that. So that would be your delivery. And then as far as the content goes, the content, first of all, you want to make sure that your content is interesting, that it's relevant to the person you're speaking to. Secondly, you want to make sure that your content is credible, that it sounds like something that you didn't just make up, but something that you did some research on. Furthermore, you want to avoid jargon and abbreviations and acronyms. Use everyday speech that at the same time communicates what it is you wish to say. And so those are the 3 most important parts of a 2-minute presentation in my mind.
Now, a topic of controversy, specifically in the IELTS speaking interview, is body language. And we've talked about this in some of our videos as well. And certain sources of information on the internet, instructors have discredited the importance of body language in the IELTS speaking because they worry that students get nervous and focus too much on what their hands and arms and head are doing and not enough on what they're actually saying. Our group has advocated more for body language, and I would love to get your input on what you believe is the importance of body language when speaking publicly or in this type of interview situation, even if it is not being directly marked or graded on paper by the interviewer.
Sure. I think that for me, the most important aspect of body language, as far as it relates to public speaking, is that body language it isn't what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. What your body is saying to the audience should not be a hindrance to the communication or to the delivery or to the content or the other important aspects of your speech. So you want your audience to listen to what you say and not become overly critical or distracted by how you say it, by your body language. So the way to use body language effectively is to make sure that you're communicating the kind of person that they want to be listening to. Someone who's enthusiastic, who's interested in them, making eye contact with them. Someone who's cheerful, someone who wants to be there and wants to speak. If your body is conveying this, then they will be more interested in what you have to say, and they will give due attention to the words that you are communicating.
And how do you think body language impacts the speaker?
How does the body language impact the speaker? I would say that the speaker it will affect the speaker's mood. It will affect the speaker's credibility. If the body language of the speaker is cheerful, enthusiastic, and is engaging, then this will put the speaker in a better position to deliver effectively. They will be less nervous. They will be full of confidence. They will radiate the sort of impression that accompanies a good and well-delivered speech.
Very interesting. It's quite in line with what we have been telling students, that body language and verbal language are connected at multiple levels, even on the biological plane as represented in the brain. And ignoring the importance of body language could be a very risky approach to take. Now, another kind of area of concern for a lot of the IELTS candidates and a lot of the questions that we have received in emails and social media is, I don't know what to say. So especially for part 2, they get a question like the one I mentioned earlier, talk about a business idea that you have had. They've never really thought about business. They're more involved with their school projects or their work. They're not necessarily entrepreneurial, so business-minded. And the question takes them by surprise. Now, in the IELTS, they don't have a choice to ask for another topic. It's what they get, and they have to think about their response within a 1-minute preparation time that they get. They can come up with some ideas, take some notes during that 1 minute, and then they have to answer the card given, even if it is not their cup of tea. What is your recommendation for a person who is stuck for ideas in this kind of high-intensity situation?
Okay, so you're talking about when they received this topic, they've received it on the spot?
Absolutely. No, it's on the spot. It's spontaneous. The questions are designed in a way that theoretically all people should be able to generate some ideas around it, even if, let's say, they're not business-minded, but they do not have any awareness of the question beforehand. So are there any tips or tricks or kind of advice that that maybe you've come across in your experiences that could help a person in this type of scenario?
Well, I can tell you what I used to do with my public speaking students. Every week, we would do exactly as we would practice this very situation. I would take a big bag of objects and pass it around the class. It could be an old wallet. It could be an article of clothing. It could be any sort of bric-a-brac that would come out of my bag. And then they would have to speak for 2 minutes about whatever the object was. And in the beginning, of course, a lot of them were shy, got tongue-tied, didn't know what to say. But by practicing and by listening to others, they got better and better at it. So even if you don't know what the subject is going to be that you're going to be asked to speak about, if you practice speaking about various subjects that basically are chosen at random in advance, this is probably the best preparation that you can give yourself, and you'll be better suited to that situation when it arrives in the test.
Interesting. So basically, if I understand correctly, to be proficient at improv, practice is key. So the more we practice improv, which means improvisation, on the spot delivery of unfamiliar topics, the better we become at it. And I'm a firm believer in what you have just said, and the kind of old wisdom of practice makes perfect here rings true. I appreciate you sharing that, and this is where, you know, I can tell all of our viewers that indeed use the course, use the websites, use the videos, use this type of exercise that Jacob had just mentioned in your classrooms, where you encourage each other to talk about random objects that are pulled from a bag. So very interesting exercise, and sounds enjoyable.
And I would just add, when you do this exercise, do it within the framework that I kind of spoke about earlier, about what it means to give a 2-minute presentation. Make sure that you have a clear, logical, compelling introduction, a concise body, and a memorable conclusion. And that you also make sure that you're paying attention to your delivery. If you do those things when you're making your 2-minute presentation, even about a random object you've never seen before, that will help a lot, because sometimes focusing on the structure of what you're saying helps you in case maybe prevents you from getting tongue-tied, because you're following the structure. So even if you're kind of improvising, to borrow your word, you're not going to get hung up on what you don't know if you've got that structure to carry you along. At least that's been my experience.
Brilliant, brilliant advice. Yes, structure within the improvisation, that's the key, and I couldn't agree with you more. Now, I'd like to end on perhaps the most important question when it comes to public speaking or speaking in the IELTS, having to answer questions, often random, unfamiliar questions, with a stranger. How can a person build confidence when they're in this situation? Because this seems to be the number one source of frustration and difficulty for a lot of IELTS candidates, is they just get so nervous, and they say, even if I were speaking in my own native language in this situation, I would have a lot of difficulty simply because I'm just so nervous, my mind goes blank, my tongue gets tied. How can a person build confidence for public speaking?
Yes, I think that building confidence in public speaking is very much the same as building confidence in any other kind of performance situation. I remember when I was when I was learning martial arts as a boy, when I had my first test, when I had to demonstrate my skills, and I had to do so in front of a large audience, not only of instructors but of parents. I was so nervous that I completely lost my composure, and halfway through it, I ran out of the gym. How did I get that belt later? I got it by practicing, practicing, and practicing, and by doing it in front of other people. And of course, going back to what we just talked about, following the structure that I knew was fundamental to what it was I was performing. So in this case, if you're going to be doing public speaking, practice the fundamentals of public speaking, do so within a time limit, 2 minutes is a good one to work with, and do so in front of someone else if you can. I think also, don't just use random topics. Choose topics that are personally interesting for you, because I think that when you choose something that you know about, that you know well about, and that you like talking about, you're going to be confident when you speak about it. So if you practice telling someone else about such topics, you're going to get used to the idea of speaking confidently about something within the same framework, within the same delivery system that you'll need to be using on the IELTS exam. Even if you don't know what the topic is going to be, you're going to carry that confidence with you because you'll be accustomed to it.
Very interesting. So to be extremely concise here, you've said practice and implementation, and I think the former, a lot of candidates do. So a lot of candidates spend hours and hours practicing the responses for these different questions that come up in the IELTS speaking for part 2 as well. However, it's the latter, it's the implementation that is often missing. So they practice behind closed doors, they practice in their bedrooms or in a small office or a small study space. But the first time they're actually presenting the language is often in the actual situation, and or the rare time with a good friend or a sibling that they're very comfortable with. However, I feel that what you've really put your finger on here is that they have to do their best to replicate that situation of presenting to strangers or people who are less familiar to a larger group. And these days, fortunately, online through many of our live classes that we host, candidates have the option to do that, and they need to find those kinds of situations in their surroundings. So whether it's a local public speaking organization, one that I've heard of, I'm sure you've heard of it as well, as Toastmasters, and they're international, is a good one. Or just maybe creating a random study group in their university or school to practice this before they're actually in that situation and find themselves super nervous. So
if I can just throw something in there, one thing that's really great about Toastmasters or something like Toastmasters is that not only do you get the opportunity to practice your public speaking, but you get feedback. So you get to watch other people speak publicly. So you learn by example, but you also learn from the feedback of others. People will give you tips. They'll say, why don't you try to sit up a little straighter? Or couldn't you smile more? Or, wow, wouldn't it be great if you could make eye contact with your audience? And when you learn these things and when you practice them, you learn from the feedback. I think that makes a big difference.
Practice, implementation, and feedback. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Is confidence something that people can genuinely learn, or is this, do we have to be born with a certain level of confidence? What do you think about that?
I'm absolutely convinced and certain that you can learn confidence. I remember the first time I had to stand up in front of an audience and make a public speech. I was completely tongue-tied. I was so nervous. I spoke softly. I didn't make eye contact. I was a wreck. I don't think anybody remembered anything I had to say, but they certainly remembered what a loser I was up on stage. However, I learned from my mistakes. I also got feedback from other people who saw me. And what I made sure to do before I spoke again was to practice, practice, practice. And so the next time I got up, I got through the speech. I spoke clearly. I remembered everything that I had to say. And people seemed to listen to what I had to say because they asked me questions afterwards. And I came away from the experience with 1,000 times more confidence than I had when I came into it. And I carried that confidence with me every time I spoke publicly after that. So yes, it can be learned. I'm convinced.
I'm on the same page from my own experiences as an instructor. I can say that I've gone through very similar experiences.
Mr. Doyle, it's been fantastic to have you here with us and to really just emphasize these similarities between public speaking and the IELTS speaking interview. I think this is an extremely important comparison or similarity to observe and to pay attention to, because ultimately, this will encourage the IELTS candidates to think about the interview differently than just walking into a casual conversation or a good conversation, and really appreciate the details that we spoke about and that you highlighted for everybody. So just a huge thank you for taking some time from your busy schedule to be here with us, and maybe we'll have you back here again in the future giving us some more tips and helps with the speaking section of the IELTS. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, and I look forward to the next time.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
The key takeaways from this interview are: IELTS speaking is public speaking. You have a clear goal and you're speaking to a stranger. You have to be empathetic and make sure that they clearly understand your answers to their questions. Number 2, confidence matters a lot. This not only helps your thinking and fluency, but is also convincing to the examiner. They feel that your content is original and you are expressing your true beliefs. Confidence can be practiced. Number 3, content. As the saying goes, content is king. You have to have great answers, good explanations, and some examples for those higher band scores. And number 4, body language is essential for strong communication. Just take a look at some of the most popular YouTube speaking interview videos with high band scores, and you will notice the commonality that candidates use their arms and their facial expressions throughout the interviews. And number 5, practice, practice, practice. It is through practice that we learn to understand our listeners, we build our confidence, and we create that nice fluency to get those high scores. Be sure to use the Student Partner Speaking on our websites to connect with your peers for free. When ready, book an IELTS speaking interview practice by clicking on the Speaking Interview Practice button in your My Student account. Through regular practice, you too will master not only the IELTS speaking section, but also speaking in front of a group. Good luck the next time you sit your IELTS exam. Did you like this video? To get over 100 speaking interview lessons with strategies and tips, as well as videos for other sections of the IELTS exam, including original practice tests, a fully interactive course, and an app for your phone, visit and join our premium IELTS package at gieltshelp.com. Use the code PUBLIC9 for an additional 10% discount. Click the link in the description below. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access. We are an IDP affiliate, a British Council partner, an IELTS test registration center, and I'm a British Council agent. We have helped thousands of students succeed on their exams. Just check out what this former candidate has to say.
Hi, thanks to IE Health Materials, I got a 7 overall in the IELTS exam. Now I get to work in my dream job in any country that I choose. Thank you, IE Health.
Begin learning for success. Join now. Subscribe to our channel. Click over here. Watch another video? Click right up here. And join our premium package. Click on our hero to practice your speaking, get videos, exams, and an interactive course.